of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Roku TV, and good golly, Miss Molly, with all those smart devices, it's hard to keep up with all the flies and all the new cool things happening on the internet. I can tell you one fly thing that's happening on the internet, if they still say fly these days, is something I don't want to see in my garden is a fly. And I'm talking about my garden on the internet. We are growing marijuana on our site. You can tune in and watch it happen morning, noon, and night. How's that? Make a rap song out of that. And Wolf Siegel is tending to the garden on that. And if you want to see how cannabis is grown indoors, we're going to be doing it for a couple of years. As a matter of fact, we're starting out with small gardens that you can grow in your closet to the size of a room, to the size of a yard, to the size of, 2 or 3 yards. But make it a point to go to timeforhemp.com and check out the live garden stream. Happy New Year. It is 2016. Hope you had a great holiday season these last couple of weeks. We are back. This is part 2. Last week was our first week back with the new year. This is our second broadcast of the year, and we're picking up with Mary Lynn Mathry, Al Byrne, and Michael Krawitz. This conversation, Michael was off visiting his friends at some of the UN gatherings, and Mary Lynn and Al making a point to stay in touch with their global friends so they can stay on top of the global research in the field of medical cannabis to help their patients. So with that said, I'm going to turn this conversation over to my joint host and our joint guest here at Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. I appreciate it. This is Al Byrne, folks, and I'm here representing Patients at a Time along with Mary Lynn Mathry. Patients at a Time, as you may know, is an organization with a mission of education, specifically the education of the U.S. public and healthcare professionals about the therapeutic uses of cannabis and the interface of the cannabis plant with the endocannabinoid system that we have in all living creatures. We have discovered a long time ago, actually, and not paying enough attention to it in the mainstream medicine at all. And mainstream medicine could actually learn about that very easily and online. As Casper said earlier, there's amazing things going on the internet, and maybe there's too much. But narrow your search on medical cannabis information to a website I'm about to give you, and it is themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. I repeat, themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. There, healthcare professionals online can take courses for a small fee that, if passed, they have to pass a test. Excuse me, here, I just have to cough, excuse me. They can pass a test, and they will get continuing medical education credits for their time on the online system. And again, this online system will give them complete information about various medical uses of cannabis in a clinical format. It will bring them up to date on the science and research worldwide, by the way. The research is extraordinary. In this country, it's all ostrich time. Now, we're not going to do any. Everywhere else in the world, they understand the value of this plant and the value of it as a medicine, and the research is extraordinary. And it's available, again, at themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. And one of the things that we've been doing here, and this is part 2, Michael came on a week ago, and he had just returned from Geneva, where he represented Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, Patients Out of Time, and several other organizations from the United States in front of the committee that is in charge of dealing with, or I don't know in charge, but their responsibility is to deal with illegal drugs of all kinds that float around the world. And we found some distressing things, or he did, and he reported on them, and I'm sure he'll recap that for you. And then since he's come home to the U.S., the WHO that he presented in front of has issued a report which he is fuming about. I have read, and I'll just call it incredibly disappointing, and we'll go from there. But anyway, let's welcome one of the members of Patients at a Time Advisory Board, Mike Krawitz. Hey, Mike.
Thanks so much, Al. I wanted to kind of get started by rewinding slightly and just giving a little bit of a background as to what brought us to the World Health Organization. We've entered into a coalition worldwide now. It's called the IMCPC, the International Medical Cannabis Patients Coalition, and it's made up of patient-based or patient-focused advocacy cannabis organizations around the globe. And there are quite a few. We're up to, I think, 60 now that have signed on to the coalition from around the world. And the coalition was set up in Prague in connection with a great meeting that was held there. And we've got a lot of input from Europe and a lot of input from the United States. So it's really been a great opportunity for us to share notes and compare evidence and look at, some of the trends that sometimes you can see your future by looking at someone else's trend that they're experiencing right now. So we're learning from each other. But we focused on the World Health Organization. We realized that medical cannabis, and this is important, medical cannabis is perfectly legal under the treaty. There's nothing about the International Drug Control Treaties, the so-called Single Convention. There's nothing about that treaty that prevents a medical access to cannabis in various countries. But we recognize that the United States and others have been very effectively using the treaty as an excuse to prevent research, to prevent medical access in various ways. And towards that end, we've focused on the World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization has a process by which they make recommendations to the World Drug Program. That's the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. As we talked about last time, it's made up of, I think, 53 member nations, member countries who have members on that commission and make decisions on policy. But their policy decisions have to fall within the framework of the recommendations of the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization is very important in bringing the evidence to the table of the medical use of cannabis and how it's really being effective at treating so many conditions around the world and where the science is at. As you've described in your shows and Patients at a Time has been so good at bringing forth the CME credits based on, we have a great deal of science today that wasn't available in decades past. And digging into this process, the World Health Organization itself put out a discussion paper from last year that said that the last time they really officially scientifically evaluated cannabis in this process was in 1935. And the consensus from our organizations that are our mentors, Transnational Institute, for example, they're very adamant that we need to have what's called a critical review. And again, this is the process by which you get the recommendations from the World Health Organization that are then binding on the World Drug Program. So it's such an important piece of turf. And Steph Scherer and I went in representing patients and the patient perspective and the science and the evidence and all that. We were the only two there representing the cannabis issue. We did our best, but the whole process has been rather sketchy. We were supposed to speak on Monday. The week before, we were promised on that Monday the documentation on cannabis for that hearing. They never sent it. On Wednesday, we're asking about it. Where is it? Oh, it's coming. We're working on it. And we never got it. Friday comes. The weekend's coming in. We're on the phone with Geneva. Where is the paper? We're working on it. It's sorry that it's been so long. We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. Sunday night, getting ready to speak Monday morning. Where is this update that the World Health Organization is promising us, that the draft paper that they're going to be discussing on Monday, where is it? Sunday night? Oh, well, you're not going to have a copy of it. Sunday night, late at night, we found out we weren't going to have a copy. So we go in blind to testify, having no idea where the process is actually at, where, what documentation they're working off of. And we testify to the best of our ability. Steph gave them the monograph, the herbal monograph, which is a great piece of documentation. I hit them really hard on the history of the WHO process and how they needed to do a critical review, and how the science has gotten away from them. But even more than that, I read them some of the great testimony of the AMA back from the Marijuana Tax Act, where they were talking about how they hadn't seen big problems with cannabis in the pharmacy. Why were they even there in the hearing at all? Which I think was very high impact on these doctors who just assumed that 100 years ago it must have been a horrible problem. Well, the AMA was there in the Marijuana Tax Act to differ with that point of view. And the documentation from nearly 100 years ago that the World Health Organization is basing its current position on is really atrocious. The Transnational Institute reported on it in a document they call The Rise and Fall of Cannabis Prohibition. And I encourage listeners to pull that up online. You can pull the book down for free. Transnational Institute, The Rise and Fall of Cannabis Prohibition. And you'll see there's a Dr. Wolf that wrote things that sounded like they came right out of Hearst's newspapers. And it was attributed to the United States influence that he was saying these things. And that's where we're at in the World Health Organization process. So I think I told you about the fact last time that just as I was finishing my testimony, I made a comment because one of the doctors that was there on this expert panel was none other than Dr. Bertha Madras, a PhD, Professor Madras is a professor of neurobiology, neuropsychopharmacology. I'm not even sure of her qualifications, but she's a professor there at Harvard and has a list of publications as long as both your arms, and she's right there in the committee, having once worked for our drug czar's office. I recognize her to be one of the key opponents to medical cannabis in the United States, having spoken for the United States government there in the rescheduling hearings against us very recently. And I said so to the committee, much to my horror and dismay the other day when we finally do get the documentation from the WHO, long embargoed. Who wrote it? But Dr. Professor Madras. And it says that it was commissioned by the expert committee. So evidently the expert committee paid her to give her opinion on medical cannabis, which to my mind is like going down to the pharmacy and asking for their opinion on politics. It's really the inappropriate person to ask. She has no clinical experience and has no idea of the state of the art around the world. Her document looks like it was written by NIDA, and it was written through a funnel. So, don't tell me about that. Don't tell me about that kind of perspective. And I can't believe that that's where we're at, that the World Health Organization is dropping the ball, isn't doing the critical review, isn't even taking the issue seriously enough to do any of its own work. And I'm not sure at the time of this radio show where we're going to be at with this fight with the process. But the process needs to change, and there needs to be a critical review, and the documentation needs to be written by an unbiased or at least peer-reviewed subcommittee, not by a drug warrior, Dr. Professor Bertha Madras.
Well, you got your rant done now, huh? Hey, listen.
I think I covered the key points there.
Yeah, let's go over a couple of them though. We got 4 minutes until we take a break, maybe 3. But I think the last time we talked, Mike, I think I said, well, or something like, well, maybe in this particular instance where we're talking about medical cannabis, the WHO will become pretty meaningless. And even after hearing your explanation of why they are important, which I think theoretically is correct, I believe by the execution of this document that they have produced, which I read and find disappointing, written by your professor, that you don't like, and I don't like her either, by the way. I think that just shows them that that we should pretty much tell the WHO, the media that ask questions to us about them, that we consider them a political tool now and really have no expertise at all within the medical cannabis community, and apparently they don't. So it wouldn't be stretching the truth at all. And then I would hope that we could turn the conversation to where we've all tried to turn it for the last 20 or 30 years, which is over to the people that actually know what the hell they're talking about. This has been the serious flaw of our procedure ourselves to get the cannabis plant made to be a medicine all these years. I think is we just haven't been able to convince those in power that this is the way to go. The WHO has power. I think where I am with all these power trips, and anybody who listens to this show can understand, we just need to challenge them, Mike. I would hope that you and Steph, as the people that actually represented us all there, could write a short note to them and just an explanation that take a poll from the guys you went over there to represent. A poll from VMCA, from the VFCC, from Patients at a Time, is you did it. We're disappointed in your lack of professionalism, something like that. But look, Casper's going to get on my butt here about taking a break. I might be just a tad early, but we'd rather be early than late, because you know how Casper gets. So, folks, we'll be back just in a couple of minutes with Mike Krawitz, and we'll talk a little bit more about the WHO, but we're also going to move on to the Veterans Administration of the United States, veterans issue, and in particular the whole aspect of drug testing and what it really means. Casper, if you will, sir.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.
Are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Just gonna stand here and watch you burn one. That's alright, because I love the way it smells. Just gonna stand here and watch you get high. That's alright, because it should be legalized. Should be legalized.
I can't tell you what it really is. I can only tell you when it feels right. I come back from work and wanna take a break from real life. My dreams didn't work out. I'm stuck here in the rat race. Going to work from 9 to 6 shouldn't be a disgrace, but not in this place, the United States, where we look up to Britney Spears instead of Bill Gates. What a disgrace. How did we get to this place where our culture developed really horrible taste? Who do we blame? I can give you plenty of names. I point my finger at them, I don't really care what they say. Look at the magazines, People, Us Weekly and Star, all those celebrities, but we don't even know who they are. That's cause most of us are living lives as normal as hell. That's why we like to smoke and listen to the stories they tell. And if there's something wrong with that, then I don't wanna be right. So puff up, pass and hand me the light.
Just gonna stand here and watch you blaze. Sour diesel, purple kush, blueberry haze. Just gonna stand here and watch you get high. That's alright, I think it should be legalized. Should be legalized. It should be legalized. Yeah.
Hey Congress, we need to get something straight. Don't pretend like you got way too many things on your plate. Our country's broke. You need to fix it today. The people voted for you. Start representing your state and regulate it, so we can end the debate and end the hating. No one should be so irate, because the money we make from taxes would really be great. The deficit would deflate, no need to incarcerate. Hey Congress, start using your heads. Not everyone who smokes weed is lazy with dread. Sarah Palin, Clinton, even Obama have admitted to smoking it, so enough with the drama. Like prohibition in the 20s, this law is outdated. Weed is safer than booze, it's time to regulate it. And if you don't pay attention to me, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start a revolution and then vote out your whole crew.
Just gonna stand here and watch you smoke. That's alright, I think I also have a toke. Just gonna stand here and watch you float to the sky. That's alright, I think it should be legalized. It should be legalized. It should be legalized. Yeah.
Adam Sandler, one of my biggest role models. If I'm gonna do a song on weed, I'll do it full throttle. Let's name some names, just like the Hanukkah song. But instead of Jewish people, these ones hit the bong. Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, those are obvious ones. But Martha Stewart and Oprah, let's start naming the big guns. Kimmel, Jon Stewart, even Stephen Colbert. Woody Harrelson smoked so much that he lost all his hair. Matt Damon, Clooney, Pitt, most of Ocean's 11. If Angelina smoked me out, I think I would be in heaven. Bill Maher, Jack Black, Tina Fey, Charlie Sheen, all four smoke green. So there's the media queen, Perez Hilton. We all know you smoke joints, I don't judge you for that. You get extra points. Halle Berry, Richard Branson, John Kerry, Al Gore. I'm not nearly done yet, I'm gonna name some more. Do you see how this list is ridiculous? The facts aren't conspicuous, my research is meticulous. They've all smoked and are supporters of weed. The list goes on and on, like Michael Phelps on Capacity, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Justin Timberlake. What they both have in common is that they like to get really big. Eminem, Megan Fox, Rihanna too. I know you smoke Natalie Portman, so this one's for you.
Not gonna waste time and just stand by. I'm gonna send this to my congressman tonight. Weed is American as apple pie, and now it's time for us to make it legalized. Make it legalized. Make it legalized.
Yeah, make it legalized. I don't care what you call it. If you call it medical cannabis, if you call it ganja, if you call it marijuana, if you call it weed, if you call it social use, if you call it industrial hemp, if you call it whatever the hell you want to call it, the very first thing you've got to call it is illegal. So before you have that pissing contest about what we're going to call the plant, let's end the fact that we have to call it illegal first. Get up off that couch, get involved in your community, and bring an end to prohibition. It is just a plant. So many people have smoked it. Every president for the last 4 terms, 4 administrations, I think, back, used it. And had they been arrested like so many other people for the use of marijuana, they never would have held the Oval Office. Well, I'm not here to rant. I'm here to share joy, love, and peace for the new year. And we're going to pass this joint conversation back to my joint host and our joint guest here on the big joint broadcast at Time for Hemp. Al, Mary Lynn?
Here we are again. Yep. Al Byrne here, and let me reintroduce Mike Krawitz. Mike is the co-founder, and executive director of Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. He's also been on the board of advisors of Patients at a Time for, I don't know, forever, for a couple of decades, I think. And Mike has ably represented patients. He is a 100% disabled Air Force veteran, and he has ably represented patients, especially veteran patients, throughout the country. He's well known in the veteran community and well respected. But today what we're talking about generally, and we're going to move on to some veterans issues, is about his experience with the World Health Organization. I had asked Michael a question, and he told me during the break that he thought of just a brilliant answer. So what is it, Mike?
Thanks, Al. Well, you were talking about the relevance of the WHO in this process of ours anymore, if it's even relevant at all. And, I think that if you look at what happened with the International Narcotics Control Board, where this is a body of the United Nations that takes care of some high-level forms and documentation concerning countries' quota of how many drugs they're asking for from the system, like your permission slip that you put in authorizing your country to have X amount of morphine or whatever, because this is what you've asked the system to have based on your needs from the previous years and from projections, etc. And this is a really important job. And they're also supposed to tell people what the treaties actually say. They're supposed to be like the quasi-legal authority, and like the Supreme Court of the U.S. telling us what our laws actually say through the lens of the Constitution. They're supposed to be telling us what the treaties actually say through the lens of the Charter of the UN. And instead, this last president or so of the INCB was anti-marijuana and used his whole billy pulpit to say ridiculous things against marijuana. And I think really took away all of the authority of this office, the INCB. And I use that as an example because right now the World Health Organization is in a fight with the powers that be in the drug control system over the placement of ketamine. And the WHO recommends that ketamine not be scheduled, because if you schedule it, it'll make it less available to people who really need it, and that would hurt people. And the prohibitions of it, if you will, do not really help the world health situation, looking at it from a lens of both addiction and treatment. And weighing all that together, they've come to the conclusion that keeping it out of the drug control program is the best bet. But yet, here we are, this IMCPC, a coalition ready to back the World Health Organization, ready to support even changes in the policy at the United Nations to allow for a more streamlined process for the World Health Organization to exert its authority and make its recommendations. And here they're playing games. Not only do they have this report, an update, quote unquote, written when they really should be doing a thorough, peer-reviewed, critical review, which they're not, but they have this questionable report written by Professor Madras, a drug warrior from the United States, who many call a shill of the United States federal government. And then when I present this relationship with the federal government of the United States to the committee in my testimony and ask them to look into it, because she has spoken on behalf of the U.S. federal government against us in our effort to reschedule the United States, they have suppressed my testimony. My testimony has not been put up on the World Health Organization site, even though I gave it to them in a timely fashion. It lists right on the website, these are the presentations made to the World Health Organization Expert Committee. There's Steph's presentation. There's all the ketamine presentations, but mine is not there. And I think that's very telling. It's a form of censorship. They're backing and paying for, evidently, this document written by Professor Madras, a drug warrior for the United States, is an offense against mankind. And I really don't know where to go from here. I mean, I look out at the world and I say, we don't want to fight against the World Health Organization and help China overcome the process and outlaw ketamine and, have the horrible outcome that would have. We don't want to support China and Russia and their efforts to outlaw all drugs. We want to support the WHO. We want to believe in the WHO that it's a ethical process that takes into consideration the evidence and produces recommendations that the world drug system can then make the basis of their decision-making process. But that's not happening. And without that, I'm afraid we have a vacuum that we find ourselves unable to effectuate any kind of change against this almost 100-year-old mandate. And to make it very simple, the drug control treaty scheduling and all that is different than the drug control scheduling in the United States, and it's all complicated. But it's rather simple if you look at it from one simple aspect. Heroin and cannabis are listed the same way in the treaty, just as heroin and cannabis are listed the same way in the U.S. law. And that's absurd. And it has to end. But there's no process that I can see to do that. I'm definitely open to suggestions from the world out there on how we can forge forward. Do we have to rebuild the WHO? What are we going to have to do?
Well, I'd wait and see what kind of input that you get, and I'm sure you'll get some. What I think I'll do, and I think we ought to do, is we all ought to tell everybody about this relationship, which seems to be too familial, if not incestuous, between your professor and the WHO. I mean, Patients at a Time, as you know, Mike, but let me tell these folks, we are held to incredibly strict standards. And we welcome those standards, by the way. When it comes to the folks that we invite to an accredited conference on which the online stuff is built on, but these accredited conferences that go on, the people the scientists, the clinicians, the patients that testify at these conferences and make their presentations at these conferences are held to very strict accounting about who they work for, who their buddies are, who gives them money now, today, or yesterday. And this all has to be, if there's some sort of interrelationship here, conflict, if they call it, then it must be, and we certainly publicize it right there in the handouts, everything we do about the conference. And it seems to me, Mike, that the story here isn't so much about the ineptitude, the ignorance, the reluctance, the political correctness that Trump talks about. It's the story here is that we have an organization that's supposed to be responsible, that is buying prepackaged, biased, prejudiced information, and that information, if wrong, and we all think it is on this show, is going to hurt and kill people because of what is publicized. That's a story. I don't know if is that just flat out lying for money? Is it fraud? I mean, I don't know this professor, but I invite her right now on the Patients at a Time show where she can speak to us and 2.5 million people about why cannabis isn't medicine. But in the meantime, I think that's the story. And I've read your testimony. I've read Mike Krawitz's testimony. He sent it to me. I read it. And I believe he said it. And so when I read that in that testimony, he did criticize in advance this professor, not even knowing she was the author of this document that was withheld from him and Steph Scher. Well, why did they withhold it? I mean, this is also stupid. It's like these people are playing some government game that ran out of steam about 30 years ago here, and it's been overtaken, but they're still doing it, Mike. And I think that's the story. I think it's a story of censorship, of ignorance, of mendacity, and of hubris. That's what I think it's a story about, and I think that's the way we ought to present it to anybody that will listen to us. Ben Swan on this network, Zach, you listening? The Huffington Post. Anybody out there that gives a damn about this stuff ought to be jumping on these people, Mike.
I hope so, Al. I hope so. We'll see. We'll see what this new year brings, and I do have hopes that if we have to, we'll make sure that the World Health Organization Expert Committee reflects a truthful mix of scientists and not just one government or another government's perspective. Professor Madras is brilliant at presenting the U.S. federal government's perspective, which is very focused. It's like, put your fingers in both ears and go la 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 while everybody's telling you anything you don't want to hear. And there's so many references that she gives. It looks like it must be complete. And if you didn't know better, you'd swear that is a complete bit of information. But and she does talk about the cannabinoid receptor system. I think, the interesting thing about it is while she's trying so hard in the document to make the plant material sound bad, while any pills you make from it sound good, I think she misses the reality, which is that the world really doesn't know about the cannabinoid receptor system, and it's mentioned in there hundreds of times. That's going to be profound, even in the margins,
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. You've heard me say it before. It's just people demonstrating their ignorance in public, and I never did get the value of that from their perspective. But yeah, I mean, she did. She wrote about it. I don't know if she said hundreds of times, but there's several hundred times that in that document we heard about endocannabinoids and how they were good for us. But they weren't good for us if they came from the plant, but they were going to be great for us if they come from Monsanto or Dow or somebody. Which is, probably... That's the only thing she knows. I mean, this woman, let me guess. I mean, I'm pretty good at this. She doesn't have a green thumb. She's never grown a damn thing in her life. She lives in a concrete jungle and lives in airplanes and spends a lot of time on electronics. She's probably spends more money on her hair than I do on my jeans. And the bottom line is she doesn't know a damn thing about cannabis, and she probably doesn't even really understand it's a plant. And because the people I've talked to like that, they go, it's a drug. I said, no, it's not a drug. Drugs don't go in the ground. And they look at you like, what is this guy talking about? It grows in the ground. It's a drug. No, it's not. It's a plant from which some chemicals can be produced that could be called drugs. But you don't need chemicals. You need the plant. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I just want to make one last comment about the plant, and about Professor Madras from Harvard and her knowledge base. She rails and rails against the plant as if it's evil and dangerous and it's got hundreds of compounds we don't understand. But let's look at the real world for a second. In the real world, if you have the plant, cannabis, growing in your field, and it has less than 0.1% of THC, what do they call it? They call it hemp. And it's perfectly legal, and they grow it, and they make soap out of it, and they make shampoo out of it, and they make food out of it, and you can eat the seeds of it, and you can take the stalks and use it for bedding for your sheep and your goats, and it's really actually quite wonderful stuff, as long as it doesn't have the THC in it. And the THC, by her own account, is a medicine, perfectly safe and effective and legal. But yet you put the THC in the plant material, and now it becomes evil, dangerous, with hundreds of unknown compounds. Wait a minute. Am I the only one who's actually thinking critically here? Am I the only one who's actually listening to her? She is making a ridiculous argument against nature, against God, and against the people of this earth, just in the front to logic and science. And I think that to allow her to speak vicariously for the United Nations drug control program by having her profess a document like that is an affront against humankind. You're
right, but we got to go on a break. But I think it'll be fun over the next month or so, don't you, to make fun of her? Anyway. I
think you're right. I think this is the beginning of a new campaign for us, and Professor Madras is on our radar now.
Yeah, it gives us a target, with a name, and let defend her idiocy. I mean, I think it gives us a platform of discussion, and we can, we collectively, medical cannabis patients and their caregivers, can obviously raise the quality of the discussion, and that's what we intend to do. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, folks.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yeah, it does. It grows from the earth. I mean, it's like anchored. It can't chase you down the street. It can't grab a weapon and beat you with it. It can't do anything, but yet there's all these laws because of all these people who are terrified, just totally frightened by this plant. And I don't get it. And it's not even the kind of plant like, poison oak or poison ivy, where if you encounter the plant, something negative happens to you as an individual. In fact, when you encounter the plant, many wonderful things happen to you as an individual. And yet this plant that is anchored, just anchored in the soil, just growing there, has terrified so many humans throughout the past 40, almost 50 years. Good golly, Miss Molly. Can we stop being afraid of the boogeyman? With that said, I'm going to pass this joint chat back to my joint friends here on the joint broadcast on Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. Al Byrne speaking here for Patients at a Time. And I think I missed completely about putting out the web pages, but you can find information about Patients at a Time at medicalcannabis.com. You can also find information at patientsatatime.org. And at both locations, you will have available an explanation done by Mary Lynn about the endocannabinoid system. It's right there on the home page. Just scroll down a little bit, and you'll see where it begins. And I urge everybody listening to this program that they watch that brief explanation that Mary Lynn does. I think it might take 20, 25 minutes, but it'll change your life. Because you'll then understand how important the endocannabinoid system is to your well-being, the well-being of your family, your horse, your dog, your cat, your parrot, your lion, whatever you love, and the well-being of every wild animal on Earth. All of them have an endocannabinoid system, every one of them. The only things on Earth that are alive that don't have an endocannabinoid system are insects. So think about the ocean. Everything in the ocean has an endocannabinoid system, from whales to coral. It's just an amazing fact that you need to know, as well as your physicians and your nurses. But certainly, if you love anybody at all, including yourself, you find out about the endocannabinoid system on medicalcannabis.com. And from there, you will also find organizations like the one that Mike heads up, Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. And I'm proud to be a director of that organization, as is Mary Lynn. And we do good work for veterans. And a lot of the veteran work we have done, our beginnings came around things called drug contracts and urine testing and all of that. So, Michael, I'm going to let you lead into this, but if we could sort of shift over into that area of discussion for the next 12 minutes, I think that'd be good for our listeners.
Absolutely, Al. Yeah, the fight to get cannabis, back on the shelves in the pharmacy or back in the hands of veterans is something that goes back. I really never thought much about it until we started getting asked pointed questions around the 2010. But in reality, veterans have been involved since day one. I'm sure the veterans that brought back cannabis from the kind of Central Asia area, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, even Korea, and brought that cannabis back and shared it with others. Was kind of our reconnection with that history that had been lost for almost 100 years. To us now, it was about 50 years to them of cannabis as a medicine, and it was the people associated with them, people like Dr. Andy Weil and Dr. Mikaria and Dr. Grinspoon and others that brought this back into the intellectual kind of area, and working off of that, we've been able to put cannabis in the hands of people under state law, but not under federal law. And recognizing that, we were working inside the VA to clarify the VA's position on that, and we got a VA medical marijuana policy in 2010, updated in 2011, that made it very clear that veterans are using medical marijuana under state law and that they shouldn't be punished in the VA system. It should be treated like any other medicine. And that policy, it was in the form of a memo, which expires at the end of this month, just a couple of weeks away. And hopefully, by the time you hear this, we'll already have in hand the draft of the new policy. But the U.S. government hasn't really been forthcoming with what they're going to replace it with. So we hope, very, very strongly hope that the new VA medical marijuana policy is very inclusive, and it talks about how veterans are using cannabis in the various states for not just pain, but for post-traumatic stress, seizure disorders, even symptoms from like multiple sclerosis and traumatic brain injury, cancers of various kinds. So, it's very important that the VA recognizes this and not just make it a pain memo. And also, we need clarification in the policy of exactly what the doctor is supposed to do. There's a lot of gray area in the policy as it stands today. You look at the pain management policy and it calls for drug testing, but it doesn't really tell the doctor what they're supposed to do with that drug test. And our conversations with the ethics committee and the pain management directorate of the VA tells us that the drug test is supposed to be just an improvement of the communication between the doctor and the patient, that it's never supposed to be used punitively, and it's only supposed to be done with a strict oral consent. And what we've found with our initial polling of vets is we've found it hard to find any veteran that's given oral consent. And in fact, I have personally, rather recently, been drug tested without my consent, and have gone down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what you're supposed to do in that case. You go to the lab, you expect to have any number of tests done on your urine, your blood, whatever, for your health, for your benefit. You do not expect them to be on a fishing expedition for illegal drugs, for the drug enforcement aspect of the government. But yet that's what they're doing. And they're supposed to be talking to you about that. They're supposed to be counseling you on that. They're supposed to be giving you the option of not doing it and telling you if you don't take the drug test, what the options will lead to, what those outcomes will be. And I'm telling you that the doctors don't even know what the outcomes would be if you don't take the drug test. I think most doctors would probably just threaten you with the denial of service, denial of your pain treatment or whatever controlled substance prescription drug that you were taking that was calling you into a drug testing regimen. So the drug test is kind of a rabbit hole, and we're going down it right now. The end result we need to see, independent of the medical marijuana policy that we'd like to see new in the end of January, is a new way of handling the oral consent for the drug testing with very clear outcome, projections for what the veteran should expect if they don't want to be drug tested and don't want the federal government to have evidence of their illegal drug taking behavior.
well, of course, we're all concerned about medical cannabis on this show, and Mary Lynn has in her past been the executive director of a methadone clinic that was operating here, still operates here in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the state of Virginia would like to have some, they did urine testing, and of course the patients were informed of that. But I think the point here is what do they call it, Mary Lynn, when you do a drug test and you leave off cannabis? What's the thing you leave it off of?
A panel.
Panel. There you go.
Yeah. For any hospital, any clinic can when they want a drug screen, they can specify specifically what they want to test for. And clearly, when you're looking for prescribing opiates to a patient or something in the pain clinic, then you can test to see if they're taking that opiate, test to see if they're taking other opiates, and it would make sense maybe to test for benzodiazepines or barbiturates, which could be extremely deadly dangerous if they're in combination. But they don't have to add cannabis. There's no requirement to add cannabis. It's just routine, and they stick to that routine.
Yeah, but I'm going to be upbeat for a minute here, Mike. Which you go, whoa, wait a minute, what's wrong with him? But I'm thinking that I'm hoping and thinking that my experience with military medicine was wonderful. I'm still in that vein. Even I've been out for a long, long time, but I was taken care of in the military by experts who cared about me.
And they actually have time to listen to you and deal with what your issue is, as opposed to time you.
Yeah. I mean, it did. I just can't tell you how happy I was, and everybody's been in military medicine. And what we're dealing with the VA is a lot of people that are in that mindset. Whether we think the VA is competent enough as a bureaucracy, that's another discussion. Is the medical doctor, nursing staff competent? Absolutely. The technicians, absolutely. They have good equipment now, yes. But what my point here is, the point is these docs and nurses need to be informed, as Mike says, that it's okay now. We've had 2 years of experience, going on 3 years of experience, dealing with veterans that come into VA facilities that are being also seen by civilian docs, etc., that have been using cannabis. And correct me if I'm wrong out there, audience, but in all of these veterans, millions of them, in all of these states where they have medical cannabis or legal cannabis, these vets, by the millions, are using cannabis and going into VA facilities and being treated as veterans, and their medical use is being incorporated into their Veterans Administration medical protocol. And I have not heard from the VA of any case where cannabis has proved to be a problem. Think about it. Millions and millions of vets, 2-3 years of experience, cannabis legal, medical, incorporated into the VA health system successfully, obviously, or they'd be bitching about it. So I'm hoping, Mike, that the new VA directive leans on that experience, leans on the experience of the states, which have shown positive results from their laws, and says we're gonna just treat all veterans the same. That Al Byrne's right. Treatment by geography when you're dealing with medical problems is illogical, immoral, and unethical, and we're not going to do it anymore. What do you think?
I think that's the key, Al. As we've gone from state to state working on qualifications in the state laws to make sure that the list of qualifications, if they have a list, includes ailments that veterans normally suffer from or more commonly suffer from than the general public, we've found that in the testimony opposing us, there hasn't been any clinical experience to the contrary. In other words, we've had lots and lots of veterans and lots of doctors and patient advocates representing veterans in the veterans community come up and speak about their experience being fairly good with cannabis, but nobody coming up and saying they've had a bad clinical experience. And the testimony that's been against us has been really kind of canned testimony that could very easily have come through a time machine from 1995. And it's presented by a very finite source, really the psychiatric association. The psychiatrists of the United States have their psychiatric collective association, and they represent the opposition to us when we're adding post-traumatic stress, for example. And very interestingly, that's the connection back to Professor Madras, who was very deeply connected with this psychiatric addictionology association and world, where they refuse to look at cannabis as a medicine and only look at it as a drug of abuse, in which case, if you're using marijuana illegally, that in itself, just because it's illegal and you're using it, qualifies you to be listed as a disorder. So, they've got that stuff bound down. Marijuana is a drug of abuse. They don't want to see it any other way. And our experience has been really good out there in the field. So there you go.
There you go. And we got to go. Casper says we got to go. So let me just remind folks that Time for Hemp has been kind enough to invite patients at a time on this hour for now well over 2 years. And we appreciate the invitation. And we would just like to pass along to you that this is all made positive because people out there sponsor this program. And we hope that you would support these sponsors by buying their products or at least talking about them in a positive and wonderful fashion, because we think they're positive and wonderful. But anyway, we'll be back next week. We will be talking, of course, about medical cannabis. We will be representing Patients Out of Time. And you can find us at medicalcannabis.com. If you want to find or talk to Mike Krawitz, you can go to facebook.com /USA.VMCA. USA.VMCA. Until next week, take care. Al Byrne.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.